Hello, I believe we are live. Um, I'm hoping that we're live. I did everything I was supposed to do. Um, Hello, and welcome to the 2022 Association for Mormon Letters Conference. My name is Melissa Leilani Larson, and I currently serve as the president of AML. We at AML are really excited for the thoughts, writings, and discussions that will be shared this weekend. We are particularly pleased to be able to use this conference as a platform to honor the memory and legacy of renowned Latter-day Saint writer and scholar Eugene England. Gene passed away 21 years ago this summer, but his work remains. And in our discussions as a presidency, planning this conference, that would be myself, along with recent President James Goldberg, incoming President William Morris, and AML Awards Coordinator Andrew Hall, we knew that at least 2 books were coming out this year discussing Gene's life and work. And we talked about how Mormon Lit has changed in the 2 decades since Gene's passing, and how so much of that change can be traced back to him. Tomorrow, July 22nd, is Gene's birthday, and it seemed only right that this conference should be a chance to reflect on a man who loved Mormon literature so much that he left beautiful, indelible fingerprints all over it. Gene was and still is a giant in the realm of Mormon studies, and it's a privilege to shine a bit of light on his work for the next few days. In just a few minutes at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, there will be a panel discussing his legacy and influence in depth. It's become a bit of a tradition for the sitting AML president to give an address to launch the conference. I didn't take this into consideration when I agreed to take this position. I have to confess that I'm rather nervous. I'm a playwright, and it's typical for someone in my place to hand over the words to someone much more adept at performing them. And at this moment, I'm wishing I had found an actor to play me tonight, but I couldn't find anyone tall enough. So here we go. I have struggled for much of my career with the idea of being categorized, labeled, placed in a box. To this day, I panic at the idea of all of my work being forced to follow parameters set by someone else. It feels so limiting. Of course, there's nothing actually limiting about having your work categorized. Categories and the reasoning behind them are all subjective. I can choose to write about whatever I want, and as can you, as can anyone. Those choices do not depend on how anyone's previous work has been filed, whether in a public library or on a personal shelf. I decided to be a writer when I was a child, sometime in the 3rd grade to be precise. If you would have asked me then how to categorize my work, I would have replied, I want to write books. That was always the goal. As I proceeded through school, that intent became more focused. I wanted to write fiction. I was going to write novels. I was going to write best-selling novels, but really I had no idea what I was doing or what I was going to write about, what kind of stories I was going to tell. When I began my undergraduate work at BYU, I majored in English with an emphasis in creative writing. I knew what I was going to be, what I was going to do, or at least I thought I did. I figured school was just one more of those hoops I had to jump through on my way to the New York Times bestseller list. Did I have any idea about what kind of stories I wanted to tell? Not in the slightest, only that they would, upon finally materializing, be brilliant. I would be an author, and there would be no stopping me. Wandering through the fiction section of the library, the only thing I was really sure of was what I did not want to be, which was a Mormon author. I suppose you could say I was being pragmatic. Fiction written for and by Latter-day Saints seemed to my limited teenage sensibilities to be such a tiny slice of the literary world. Mormon art struck my naive mind as exclusive rather than inclusive. I thought, you have to be a Latter-day Saint to get it. No one else will want to read this. What's the point of writing it? Novels on the shelf at Deseret Book were not even discussed in the New York Times, let alone on the bestseller list. My 20-ish-year-old self figured that the niche of Latter-day Saint literature was too narrow to be noticed or appreciated by anyone outside of LDS culture. How could I become a best-selling anything if I aimed my work at such a small, peculiar audience? I was determined to not write about Latter-day Saint characters or topics. In this way, I would avoid the label of Mormon author, and I would achieve my writing goals. In the years since, you could say that my writing and my perspective on it has shifted. For starts, I accidentally fell into the theater. I have not, as of this recording, written a novel, but I have written 18 3/4 plays. At this point in my life, I have been called a female playwright. I have been called an Asian American playwright. I have been called a Mormon playwright. Until very recently, I have struggled against all of these labels because I felt, much like I did at the beginning of my career, that people were trying to limit what I could do as a writer and what my work could do. It smacked of injustice to think that men were simply playwrights while women were female playwrights. As the mixed race child of a Filipino mother and a white American father, I have also struggled with my racial identity, with my Asianness, with my lack of Asianness, with how to own who I am and how that either dovetails with or butts up against how others choose to see me. I have only very recently let myself write about being Filipino. That would be the plays number 18 3/4, respectively, but I'm hopeful that those are only the beginning. The theater is a powerful place. I feel very strongly that it is a sacred place. I've had many personal, deeply spiritual experiences within the ethereal confines of a theater. The communication chain that goes from playwright to director to actor to audience. It is for me a cogent conduit between the temporal and the spiritual. I also believe strongly that the thing for which we all innately search for in our art and literature is human connection. We are constantly looking to connect with someone else, to see and be seen, to love and be loved. Storytelling, whether it's in the theater, whether it is in words or pictures or music, is the gift our heavenly parents bestowed upon us to make us human. Jesus teaches in parables because he knows the power of story, the power of relatability. Stories make you feel and thereby can make you learn. It has taken me years of trial and error, years of telling stories, both well and not so well, to realize and accept that I am a Mormon playwright. To know and to own that the Mormon characters I choose to put on stage are there for a reason, that the specificity of their faith, of my faith, make their experiences and thusly their stories universal and important. I will not lie to you and say that I have not struggled with my faith, with doubts, with questions, with anger, with inadequacy. Our culture still struggles with inclusivity. But my faith, however complicated, is part of who I am. It's part of my work. I do not resist the label, I am a Mormon playwright. The works of literature that we are recognizing and discussing in this conference over the next few days are exciting and important. We are in the midst of owning and reconfiguring our identity as writers, as artists, as Latter-day Saints. Mormon literature is not limited to a shelf in Deseret Book, nor is it limited to Utah or to American whiteness. This weekend, at the same time that we look back and revere the history and literature of previous generations, we are also seeing and sharing and celebrating new works that will help to establish a more multicultural Mormon identity. I hope that you will join us. Thank you.